Welcome to the Power of Design podcast. My name is Jack Osa. I'm an architect, born and raised in Colombia, South America. Years ago, I migrated to the United States to follow my dreams, and today I'm the founder and principal of Osa Studio, a multidisciplinary architectural design firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. In this podcast, we talk about design, business, creativity, and the inspiration we need to create an exciting and powerful built environment.
In this episode of the Power of Design podcast, we had the privilege of speaking with Piers Wates, a seasoned expert in real estate strategy and tenant representation. Piers brings a wealth of experience to the table as part of CBRE's tenant representation group, where he specializes in guiding occupiers through the intricate landscape of real estate. This is our conversation with Piers Wates.
Piers, welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Tell me about this amazing drink you brought today. What is this?
This is Old Speckled Hen. I thought, in the spirit of keeping up with my English heritage and knowing that you like to do this over a nice drink, I should inform your audience on some great English beer. So This is traditional English ale, and most importantly for the Americans listening, it's going to be served at room temperature.
Nice.
Cellar temperature, technically.
I love the can because I used to collect cans when I was little in Colombia.
No kidding.
And this can looks really nice. I love the design.
This is the only English beer that I can now find over here.
Wow.
So it's my
where do you find it?
Total Wine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Total Wine and Sir Edmund Halley's pub at the back of Park Road Shopping Centre.
Yeah.
They serve it on proper draft.
Nice.
So
okay,
those are my go-to.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. First time trying it.
Educating you.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Very special. I like it.
Special. I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it. It's very interesting.
Well, it's quite flat. And most Americans associate beer with being cold and fizzy.
Yes.
So it definitely has a very different flavor profile to what
Yeah,
most people are used to.
it has a lot of body.
It does. It
feels
does.
like heavy. Feels like a real drink.
A real man's drink. I love it.
Cool. Well, I'm very excited to have you today on the podcast. I know we have known each other for some years. We have run into each other at networking events here and there, grabbing coffee and lunch. And, I was enjoyed talking to you, learning about what you're doing. And I just want to learn more, about who you are, what you do, and all the things you're making here in Charlotte with your career and your life. So tell me about your origin story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, us foreigners tend to gravitate towards each other, so we got to stick together over here.
That's right.
But yeah, so I'm from England originally, born and raised. Have an American mother and an English father, and my now wife is from North Carolina. So That's ultimately how I ended up here. Was we were dating long distance, and sort of got to that point of one of us having to make a move. And I knew enough about the Carolinas and Charlotte specifically through having visited her and also my grandparents over the years to know that, one, it was a great place to live personally, just given the climate and the feel of the city and the people, but also had a little bit of, an inside track on the fact that it was a growth market with opportunity. So
sure.
Let's just say I didn't leave London blindly.
Yeah.
I knew there was good opportunity here. But really it was personal reasons that led me over here about 6.5 years ago. And so, born and raised over in England, moved here 6.5 years ago.
Tell me about growing up in London.
Yeah, absolutely. So we lived about 35 miles southwest of London. So out in the countryside on a farm, but very easy to get into London, and sort of had the best of both worlds in terms of the big city, an hour's drive away.
Yeah.
But equally, grew up in the sticks outside, playing sports and all those good fun things.
Nice. What kind of things were kind of in vogue at that time when you were growing up? Let's say as far as like music or video games. What kind of things did you grow up with?
Yeah, great question. I love that. So, I mean, personally for me, sports was always sort of at the epicenter of it all. So we played a lot of Rugby '03 on PlayStation and laptops, and then Call of Duty.
Yep.
Those sorts of games. FIFA, massive one over there.
Yeah.
Chelsea, got to give a shout out to them. I get a lot of stick over here because one of the first questions people always ask me is, who's your Premier League football team?
Yeah.
And I always respond with Chelsea.
Yeah.
And then very quickly afterwards have to declare that even though I'm a Chelsea fan, it's not really my sport. I'm more of a rugby guy.
Yeah.
And that's a distinction that we like to make over in England.
Sure.
Is, are you a rugby guy or a football guy? So
Yeah.
I'm a rugby guy, but most people don't know the rugby teams over there. So I
Yeah.
just say Chelsea.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about music?
Music. God. It's funny. I grew up actually listening to a bunch of good old American stuff from my mom and her roots over here. So
Yeah.
a lot of country, Dolly Parton, Lynyrd Skynyrd,
Oh,
those
nice.
sorts of groups. But over in the UK, I mean, it was everything from Coldplay to U2. Those were the big kind of acts in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Robbie Williams.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he was big over there with Take That, who, I mean, I actually just watched their documentary on Netflix, and
I want to watch it.
It's really interesting. And I guess I didn't appreciate it, but at the time they were essentially the top boy band in the UK, but just never made it over to the US. And it's funny how some things make the cultural divide, and some things are just so separate.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm asking because when I was growing up in Colombia, I think maybe when I turned 15, 16, I started playing in a band. So I played drums in a band, in a rock band with, one of my brothers and some other friends. So we were all, rock and heavy metal, things like that. So we were always listening to other bands. And I remember like there was a period in my life that I loved the Sex Pistols, Exploited.
Yeah.
My brother, he's a classic rock guy, and he's always Led Zeppelin, The Who, all these bands that we always wonder ourselves, man, why is all this good rock coming out of England? What's happening? Iron Maiden, which I saw them here in Charlotte, they're still playing, and it's amazing how they can produce that type of music. My wife is a big fan of Amy Winehouse. There is just all these very different types of genres, but you can feel like there is this passion behind the music that is so strong, and it comes across.
You're spot on. I mean, for such a small country, I think it can be said about a lot of things, not just music, but it's impressive how many good global artists, have come out of the UK, but also stood the test of time. And, I mentioned some ones that were current back in the day when I was sort of over there. But, you look at Elton John, you look at the Beatles.
Yes.
The list goes on. The Stones.
I know.
Saw the Stones here in Charlotte a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is amazing how many great acts have come out of England.
Yeah. So you're growing up. How do you tell me about, going to school, kind of learning about the world and kind of thinking, okay, what am I gonna do with my life? Your professional career.
Yeah. So I went off to boarding school when I was 13. So, a little bit in advance than a lot of Americans, I got a little bit of independence earlier on,
Nice.
which was honestly the best 5 years of my life.
Oh, that's
being there
cool.
from 13 to 18. It was, at the time, it seemed like a long way away from home. Now that I live in the US, I realize it wasn't that far. But it was, an hour and a half away from my parents. And, we were there 13 to 18, 5 great years. And it was just an awesome time where there was a lot of independence gained, and just freedom. I think that maybe it takes a little bit longer to come over here just because you're living at home with your parents and have that much more oversight growing
Sure.
up as kids. So certainly, had a good young experience. And then when I left boarding school, I went even further away and went to the University of Edinburgh up in Scotland. So I like to tell people I went international with my studies, took it abroad. And spent 4 years up there, which was just another kind of great step in terms of gaining more independence and distance and comfortability, I suppose, with being further away from family.
Yep.
That was another great couple of years of my life where I met some awesome people and, grew a lot as a person. And, I think all of those steps contributed to me ultimately coming out here and having the confidence to, I guess, do it on my own is maybe the wrong word, because there's been lots of people that have supported me along the way.
Yeah.
But just having the confidence to go take a risk and explore something new.
Oh yeah, 100%. So how did you figure out what you wanted to do? What industry or profession?
Yeah.
How did you make that alignment and to get into a career that led you to, real estate?
Yeah. So the answer is we have a family business back in the UK. So my grandfather and my father have always been in construction and real estate.
Yeah.
So I grew up around it, hearing them talk about the business and listening to their conversations. And, I remember driving around London with my dad. We'd go do our Christmas shopping or whatever. And he'd point out the buildings that he'd worked on throughout his, junior career as project managers, and just seeing the pride that he had in really shaping the environment and being able to point to something that stands the test of time.
Oh yeah.
I think is really powerful. And the industry just in that regard sort of, felt like a good fit. It attracted me. And so when I moved over here, I knew that I wanted to be in the real estate sphere, the property sphere, as we'd call it over there.
Yeah.
But I wasn't quite sure in what capacity I'd fit into it over here in the US. And so, ultimately it was a lot of door knocking. I moved here without a job. I just kind of took a risk. Like I said, my wife was here and wanted to be closer. So, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, but, so started door knocking and talking to all of the usual players that we see around town, whether that was the developers, the GCs, the brokerage, whoever it was. And, just so happened at the time, Cushman and Wakefield was looking to grow their office tenant rep team, and right time, right place.
Yeah.
It was a great.
But did you
fit for
have
me.
any experience doing that before?
Not in brokerage, no.
Wow.
No, it was a foreign concept to me.
Yes.
So I think probably the scariest part of it was the fact that it's 100% commission based role.
Oh yeah.
And that is not a thing in the UK.
Yes.
It is salary plus bonus. And I think over here in the US, not just in real estate, but in sales in general,
Oh yeah.
there's a lot more, incentive through the commission structures, to where base salaries are a lot lower and there's a lot more risk,
Yeah.
but equally opportunity. And so definitely that was a big, learning lesson for me in terms of how people were compensated over here. But yeah, no experience prior to moving over here and getting into the role.
So how long did it take you to realize what you were getting yourself into?
I think pretty quickly. Got thrown in the deep end.
Yes.
Got thrown in the deep end pretty quick. But, I had an awesome team around me at the time. And I think that's, people ask me now getting into the industry, any kind of recommendations and thoughts that I have. And my biggest thing is find a team that's going to support you and help you grow.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of teams out there that will say, good luck, go figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's not the environment that you want to be in to really succeed and be successful. So
Sure.
I was lucky. I think that's benefit of hindsight, but that's definitely one of my takeaways is find a good team that will support you and help you grow and be successful.
Yeah. And I will think that for you coming here, not knowing anybody, maybe that was a good thing, because nobody's know who you are. You don't need to impress anybody. You just need to come and make connections, connect with people, every day. And that's all you need to do.
I think you're spot on.
And I think it's easier when you don't have baggage, right? You're not concerned. Oh, what if I don't do it? What if I don't make it? What if they reject me? Well, nobody knows me, so
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, that was part of why I moved here. Was
yeah.
just there was there was a point early on in my life. I was single. I
Mhm.
had little risk, and it was just don't be afraid. Just go try it. Go try something. And on the one hand, it's the risk element that you mentioned of not having fear because people don't know you, and you have nothing to lose.
Yeah,
But I think equally it's a motivator because you recognize that you don't know anyone, and you
sure,
can't rely on your family's networks, your
right,
friends' networks, your school system, your fraternity, whatever it might
right. Oh
be.
yeah,
So you got to find new ways to hustle and make it work.
yeah. You have to make it work. That was the case for me for sure. Like I didn't have anybody to impress, and I just needed to make something happen because
Right.
that's what you are. Cool. So you start working there, kind of learning the industry, making things happen. Tell me about kind of that progression when you realize, okay, I can do this, and kind of figuring out what needs to be done, and what did you like about that industry?
Yeah. I'm still figuring it out. I haven't quite got there yet, but I think for me it happened pretty quick. And I don't know that I'd point to success as the reason why. I think it was genuine enjoyment in
Hmm.
what I was doing. I was given a lot of autonomy early on to go and create my own success. Yes, supported by a good team, but ultimately, in our profession, you eat what you kill, and the world is your oyster. There's
Yeah.
no limitations. Just go do what you can. And so I appreciated that opportunity. I appreciated the freedom I was allowed to do it in a way that suited me.
Hmm.
And I often describe, when I moved into that team, it was kind of like going to the pick and mix at the candy store, where I didn't just have to learn from one person. I had a team to learn from, and they all did things differently. And I got to apply the things that worked for me and pull from certain people different skill sets and mannerisms. And,
Hmm.
that really helped develop me. But, I come back to it. It was just a genuine enjoyment to get up and go to work in the morning because I didn't feel like I was kind of chained to my desk and counting down the clock. It
Yeah.
was how much can I get out of my day? Who can I go speak to today? Have a conversation with? What can I learn about a new building? And so it was just a lot of growth that made it really pleasurable. And I think that was the key for me. That was the hook.
Yeah, and there is a whole different motivation to wake up every morning and go to work when you have a paycheck that you just need to go there, sit down in front of a computer for 8 hours, and you get a paycheck whether you produce results or not. But when your compensation is tied to results, that's a whole different game. It's
Absolutely.
not about time. It's not about. It's about making it happen. And
Absolutely.
then I think you become more efficient. You kind of get rid of all the fluff,
Hmm.
and you focus. Okay, how do I use my natural abilities? My strengths to really laser focus on making this thing happen.
I think you're exactly right. And I think that may be one of the things that I continue to maybe evolve the most and have learned the most over time is it's not just about being busy, it's about being productive.
Yep.
And I think as I've grown in my career, I've figured out how to do that more effectively.
Yeah.
And it's something that really interests me because I think often there's maybe a misconception when people hear that I work at CBRE, the largest real estate firm in the world. They think, big corporate Fortune 500.
Yeah.
Sure, it is. But in our role as independent contractors, really we're entrepreneurs
Sure.
in generating our own book of business and relationships, just supported by a great platform to
Right.
help us offer more to our clients. And so, it took a bit of time for me to realize, but as I've got more into it, I now take that entrepreneurial mindset
Mm-hmm.
and approach to my business. And so I've started reading a lot more books around how entrepreneurs run and grow their business and, outsource, delegate, all those sorts of things. So it's something that really interests me, and I'm learning more and more each day.
Nice. What are some of the books that you have liked the more.
Yeah. The most recent that I've read, well, one of the most recent that I've read this year is Who Not How.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, by Dan Sullivan.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose written by someone else whose name I forget, but Dan
Yeah,
Sullivan's concept, which has been really enlightening for me. And trying to apply it has been interesting, but it just really hooked me and interested me. And my wife actually owns her own business as well, and so I was just telling her the other night about some of the themes in the book for her to apply. So it's
So yesterday I had a call with strategic coach.
no kidding.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about
Yeah.
joining.
We need to huddle up on this.
Man, and I
Some
was
trips to
thinking
Chicago.
while you were talking, I was like, maybe let's do it together. It's
Yeah.
not
Let's
that,
go to Chicago.
yeah, it and they were trying to sell the program to me. I'm like, you don't have to sell me the program. I already bought it. I just want to know what do I need to do. But
Yeah.
I got it. But yeah, that book is amazing. I think part of the thing that I love about Dan Sullivan's books is the simplicity of the concepts. They're very basic. Sometimes people think that complexity, is gonna take you somewhere, but complexity just gets to confusion. And most of the time, especially in business, we tend to overcomplicate things, and they don't have to be like that. It's just we're having a very clear objective and what are the steps to get there.
No doubt.
In a in a fast way, but we're all getting in each other's lanes and making things more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. It's like almost having to prove worth.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be as complicated as some people like to make it.
Yeah. I just bought yesterday. I ordered in Amazon. It's a book by Charles Duhigg. He wrote the Power of Habit.
Yeah.
I read it in 2013, and that book is changed my life in 2013. It was amazing. Once I understood what habits are and how they work, they had a profound effect in my life. Then he had a couple of other books that I were like, but this one, man, is called Super Communicator. And it's all about how we communicate as humans. And I haven't read the book, but I listened to a podcast when he was interviewed about the book, and that's why I bought it. When you think about just what we're doing right now, talking, we're humans, and then our lungs are pushing air through this pipe,
right?
And we move it like that. So I make these sounds that hopefully these sounds are capturing what's in my brain. And your brain your ears are hearing this sound and they're interpreting what I'm saying. And hopefully they are what's in my brain. So communication is just a miracle. Imagine how hard is that, because it's just physics.
Yeah.
It's physics. Sound is air. And now you need to take this and make it a concept. And then we meet here in the middle. That's incredible.
Okay, you're cut off from the old speck. No more old speckled hen for you. This is going down a rabbit hole.
And then look at even written communication. You're looking at lines, and your brain is making up these lines. So I can't wait to really dig into that book, because it goes through all those basic stages, and the whole point about the book is to become a hyper communicator. So clear communication.
No doubt. It's I'd be curious to hear what you learn from that. And going back to the habits book that you mentioned, I've heard about that book before. I haven't read it, but it's funny because habits have risen to the top of my priorities this year. And one of my New Year's resolutions was every morning when I have my cup of tea, I now read my book for 10 minutes. And that's combined with another idea that I sort of got put onto right before Christmas, which was a concept called Will It Make the Boat Go Faster? And that was the GB, the Great Britain Olympic rowing team, in the build up to their ultimate gold medal in the Olympics. They had a philosophy of asking themselves the question, will it make the boat go faster? And the concept is incremental gains build up,
Yeah.
right? And so even just 10 minutes a day of something will lead to more
Yeah.
in the long run. And so I've started applying that by trying to read my book every morning for 10 minutes before my day starts, because I learned that reading in the evening I didn't find to be relaxing, but actually in the morning before my brain gets going, it's a great way to start the day, set intentions. So it's just been really effective for me. I think I've been enjoying it this year, and I need to read that book on habits that you mentioned to maybe apply some more.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes we underestimate small improvements, but when they're consistent, then you gain momentum, and that's when you start seeing the progress. I see it all the time. I'm always obsessed with learning new ways of thinking. How can I hack my brain to overcome whatever limitation I feel I have, and get better at it. And the habits conversation, it's incredible, because our brains are a habit making machine, because that means efficiency,
Right.
And the brain does not want to waste energy.
I think that's a massive part of entrepreneurship, is time management and efficiency.
Oh yeah. And that's when you see, once you get into, I know it happens in your world or any business, there are businesses where we all have the same amount of time every day. We have 8 hours of work and 8 hours sleeping and 8 hours doing something else. And you can see people making $1 million, 5, 10, 50, 500. It's like there is no rule.
Right.
It's not proportion of, you invest this time, then this is the outcome. It's just managing that time in a way that, to me, is how do you make that efficient based on your own strengths and weaknesses, because we're all different. Some people like to work certain ways, some people communicate a different way, and to me it's all about like self-reflection and learning to know who you are, and then optimize it to provide a service, and then create the results that you want for your life and your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something you learn with time, and you get more confidence in, I think, applying and executing effectively too.
Yeah.
You need a baseline to say, where are my skill sets and what do I do best?
Yeah.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
So tell me about your client base. Who do you work with? What's the advantage of benefits that your clients get from working with you, and how do you help them achieve their goals?
Yeah, great question. So CBRE, over 100,000 employees globally. We're all over the world. And so with that, there's an immense amount of different service lines and offerings. I sit on our occupier advisory group. So what that means is I work with businesses exclusively. I'm not representing ownership groups or developers and the like. I just represent businesses who occupy space. My job is to advise them through the process from start to finish on everything from strategy to site selection to execution and negotiation of lease or purchases of real estate.
Okay.
Now, the other part of my job is sort of acting as quarterback within CBRE to say, for this specific client, and understanding what their pain points are, what their goals are, what are the appropriate service lines that I need to bring in from CBRE to best support their specific goals and objectives?
Yeah.
And again, I think that was one of the things that I learned quickly is to be effective at my job. It's not just knowing the local property market, real estate market. It's also knowing the platform that I have behind me and how to leverage that, because that's our value, right?
Sure.
In addition to kind of the local market intel is the platform that we offer. So learning that and leveraging it effectively is a key part. So
What do you think makes you good at what you do?
communication. I think I really pride myself on how I communicate with clients and try to make every client, no matter what size, feel like they're my most important client.
Yeah.
I think that goes such a long way in building trust. And I think ultimately, running an effective process when it's backed up with the appropriate knowledge and execution.
How do you find your clients? Or how do they find you?
I wish they found me more. Call me up and ask for help.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately, we tend to have to be the ones reaching out more than they land on our doorstep for us.
Sure.
But it's and I'll take a step back. 50% of my work is here in Charlotte, working with specifically office occupiers. The other 50% of my business is working with global clients on their real estate portfolios.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a mix of office and industrial space.
Okay.
So, here in town, it's a lot of building relationships, being a part of local charitable organizations, business organizations. The British American Business Council is, I spend a lot of time there. Funnily enough, you might not believe it, but I fit in quite well.
Yeah.
So that's been a really great, productive place for me, just to build really strong, genuine relationships with no ask for business. But
Sure.
when people build trust, they start to make connections. And I think that's probably something else that I learned, is our industry is a relationship industry, and it takes time to build trust and relationships.
Yep.
And so I now sort of approach it often where really I go into a relationship hoping to build a strong bond.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably not that person whose business I'm ultimately going to get.
Right.
It's probably the person that they connect me with
100%.
down the road,
Yeah.
through that web. So it's a lot of proactive reaching out, trying to build relationships organically. But equally, one of the other things that CBRE offers is dedicated research teams that live and breathe our market and track all of the data and comp sets. And, that is a differentiator for us. The small firms don't have dedicated research analysts to track that data.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are tracking, lease comps, lease expirations. So I'm always reviewing those sorts of spreadsheets to say, when might someone start to think about real estate, and should I reach out to see if we can be a resource for them? So it's valuable both from a business development perspective, but really it's more valuable when we win the business and have the data to support the lease transactions that we're negotiating in creating leverage with landlords on behalf of our clients.
Yeah. What's a typical, let's say, profile of a really good fit for you as far as client, industry or company size?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I don't know there's a great answer. We really cover the gamut. And, if you go to a New York or a San Francisco, those markets are big enough that you see a lot of specialization within just the office tenant rep world, where they say, I only represent law firms, or I only work in this submarket.
Yeah.
Charlotte is a 55 million square foot office market. And so we have the scale, the bandwidth to cover the market entirely. So we don't really have geographic confinement.
Yep.
And then, within specific tenant industry, we're agnostic.
Sure.
I think personally, I do a lot of work with law firms and financial services, just given the Charlotte market.
Mm-hmm.
My business partner, John Christenbury, he does a lot with tech firms. He's carved out a great niche there where, he doesn't only make a living off of it because our market isn't big enough. But, so I guess we're quite agnostic is the answer.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Because you're here, we're localized. Our market is strong, but it's not too big. For me, it's very similar. I don't really focus on specific project types. We're very diversified, because I guess the scale is small enough that you can learn it and do a little bit of each one. I will think that when you get with very large clients, that you're dedicated to them for, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 years, you get forced to become more specialized,
Right.
like in larger cities.
Yeah, and I think, I should probably go back a step as well and say there's two perspectives to that, which is locally here in town, it's very hard to say that there's a perfect client type, right? I think we have a great database of information to support any client of any size that has a real estate need. Our value is market coverage, and given the scale and the reach of our team, we have the largest market share to be able to say, we understand the moving pieces of each building when maybe the space isn't publicly available, but we know it's coming available and will be a fit for you. And so we add value behind the scenes in just knowing the moving pieces. I think when you move outside of the market, really scale is our friend, because the more scale a client has, the more economies of scale they get through our platform,
Right.
the more efficiencies they find. And that's where really, that there is more of an upward trajectory there in terms of client size, in terms of square footage under lease,
Yep.
that they see more returns on our value the bigger their portfolio is.
Yep. How would you describe the market today, March 2024? Knowing that, there's COVID happened some years ago, a bunch of talks about, going back to the office, yes or no, and all, and specifically in Charlotte, that's what I'm more curious about, because we hear a lot of things happening. What's really happening today?
Yeah. Dislocated is how I would describe it.
Oh, wow.
Dislocated. And, but I will say that the fact that you asked specifically to Charlotte,
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot more positive than in other parts of the country. I think we are a relatively insulated market compared to other parts. We still continue to see, I just heard yesterday in a presentation, we still have net new migration of 125 people a day. So if talent is moving here, companies are going to be interested.
Yep.
Now, to go back to your question, I think it's dislocated in a number of ways. I'm going to give you the lens of a tenant rep and occupier perspective versus the capital markets, which is driven by interest rates, those sorts of considerations. But from our world, it's dislocated because our clients read headlines that say nobody's in the office, and they expect landlords to give them deals at 50 cents on the dollar. And that's not the case.
Yeah.
And that's for a couple of reasons. Here in Charlotte, 60% of the vacancy is in 10% of building stock, right? And we have a little over a 20% vacancy rate right now.
Yeah.
That 10% of building stock, or 60% of vacancy, that 10% of building stock is typically in the lowest class, the oldest,
Yeah.
the worst located, the most functionally obsolete. And so when our clients come to us and say we want office space, they're usually not saying, can you show me the bottom 10% of office stock for me to look at?
Yeah.
They say, what's the nicest stuff?
Yeah. Of course.
So this 10%, this 60% of vacancy isn't really a consideration for tenants in the market.
Sure.
Now, I'm not saying it's not a tenant's market. It is. We definitely hold the leverage right now.
Yeah.
But it's not quite as bad as the headlines make you think.
Right.
In terms of the leasing side of occupier office, real estate.
Yeah.
So dislocated because there's a disconnect in what our clients' expectations are, what landlords' expectations are. Their motivations are, how do I maintain the value of my building so I can get an exit? Our clients are looking at, what's my bottom line? I think that dislocation as well from a CapEx perspective, because as cost of capital has increased, the cost of construction has also increased.
Yeah.
And there's this delta between how do I fund the construction and build out of my office space and what landlords are willing to give tenants as construction allowance to move into the building. So dislocated again in terms of a delta financially. So just lots of separation and it's really led to us having to do a lot of consulting, education, just explaining. It's not quite as simple as it appears on the surface,
Right.
which is always the case, right?
Yeah, I will think that when you say dislocated on my end, I'll see it like it's like non-traditional and unexpected. I used to be very confident throwing out construction costs 3 years ago. Now I'm like, let me ask a contractor, because the numbers change and they change drastically. Then
Yeah.
you don't know what's gonna happen. But I really see how, because somewhere in that transaction, where you are, I fit somewhere in there, as an architect.
Sure.
And when you said, you need to explain more, we do the same. We need to work more, because now we need to help with pricing early on without a full design. They want to double check the price again. They want to make sure that we're being efficient with our design. So it's still the same thing, but it feels that we need to work more to make that happen.
And you raise a good point there of let me check again.
Yes.
I think that triggers another thought of mine, which is just that given the paradigm shift that we've gone through over the past few years of this move to, it's not remote work, it's hybrid work, right? I think there's 10% of companies or people that are working remote. Most people are in the office in some form of hybrid.
Yeah.
The question is, it's swung very far in COVID and it's coming back. The question is, where does it stop? And for real estate decision makers, it's really tough to commit to these decisions right now without knowing where the pendulum stops swinging.
Yeah.
Is it going to stay at 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, or are we coming back forever? I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think people have proved that hybrid work can be effective, but I think people are also recognizing as time goes on that there is a value to being in the office and building rapport with colleagues, building culture of the company, and having these sort of informal mentorship learning opportunities. So I guess going back to it, it's causing indecision because the goalposts have moved.
Yeah.
And people, frankly, are kind of scared to make mistakes.
Yes.
That someone can point to them and say, well, why did you take too much space? Because we're not working here that much.
Right.
Or you took too little space. Didn't you know we
Yes.
were coming back to the office?
Yeah.
And so it's causing this domino effect of delay and stagnation in the market through decisions as much as anything.
Yeah. Is that uncertainty? The other day, and this is funny because I thought about this in my own head, never said this to anybody, but I was thinking, man, I don't want to go to any more presentations about the office. And if we're going back, I'm like, if all these millions of hours people are spending questioning whether they need to go back or not, or going to seminars, just spend that time working on your business, make things happen. Like, it's too much time, and everybody kind of want to find the answer, and there are all these panels, and then we want to see and what they're saying. Nobody knows. Let's just use that time to focus on your business, be good at what you do, and just make it happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think, what we're hearing at a high level is there is a lot of CEO sentiment, C-suite sentiment that they would like people back in the office more than they currently are now. The challenge is the labor market is so tight that they risk coming out with a strong office policy and people jump ship to the next remote work opportunity.
Yeah.
Now that has decreased over the past 6 months as the economy has slowed a little bit, albeit maybe not as much as some people thought it would. And so, I don't think we're there yet, but the softer the labor market gets, I think the more you see people come back to the office over time.
Yeah. Where do you see yourself in the next, say, 10 years?
Can I say on a beach?
You can say whatever
I've
you
got
want.
a busy 10 years ahead if
Yeah.
that's the case. Look, I think we have a really interesting philosophy on our team at CBRE, which is very much one of teamwork and specialization within our team.
Mm-hmm.
We're building a really great team of individuals who have wonderful qualities and strengths, and it allows you, going back to a lot of this entrepreneurship and Dan Sullivan's teachings, of specialization. Do what you're good at and
Yeah.
spend your time there. And I think we're really starting to harness that as a team.
Nice.
So growing and adding to that team is the goal. I think we've got a really good thing going. And, you know, I think as a market, Charlotte has a really busy 10 years ahead as well. So, you know, it's a lot of just trying to be in front of that, being at the forefront and helping people, educating them on what we think is a great market and a great city. And for me personally, I'd love to see more English companies ending up over here. So certainly my time with the British American Business Council
And bands.
and bands. Yeah, absolutely.
More
Absolutely.
concerts.
I'm ready for the next one.
Yeah.
What was the last concert you've been to?
Oh man, that's a great question. Last concert. So because I used to play a lot of rock when I was younger, and it was interesting because you know I was in Colombia, so there's a lot of Latin American rock. So there are a lot of bands now that they're coming to Charlotte. So you know I've seen a lot of Mexican bands, even Colombian bands that they come here. They go play at the Fillmore.
Yeah, love that venue.
Yeah, so you know it's good because I think those bands that were very hot, you know, 10, 15 years ago, now they're getting older. So now they're touring more. They're probably squishing the last.
Got to fill up the retirement funds,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So they can be on a beach.
Yes,
in 10 years.
and now there is all, you know, or the audience is older people now. You can pay, you know, you can pay the tickets. It's more comfortable. You enjoy it. So yeah, that's been really fun.
So you're in the VIP area. That's
Yeah.
what I'm
Oh
hearing.
yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, I don't.
Are you in that old category now in the VIP area?
Yeah, with a wheelchair. So my last question is, do you have any questions for me?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I do. I have
Okay.
a lot.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm curious to hear or I guess where you see the Charlotte real estate market going, where you think there is the most opportunity for us to grow, and maybe where some of our shortcomings are at the moment as a city.
Yeah.
And how we can grow.
So I see. So I've been in Charlotte for 20 years. And I go and travel to other cities, you know, where I have friends. You know, I go to Atlanta or maybe New York, Florida, West Coast, and I get to kind of experience for a week or so other cities. And every time I go somewhere else, I miss Charlotte a lot. And I come back here, I'm like, man, I'm not moving. Like what we have, it's amazing. It's a paradise. The standard of living, you know, traffic is not bad at all. You know, people sometimes complain about traffic, and I'm like, man, you have no idea what traffic is. The crime rate is very low, very healthy market. So I really love living here. I enjoy it. I want to stay here. And maybe because I'm always comparing with other places, you know, when I go back to Colombia and, you know, I see what's going on down there, I'm like, man, I'd rather stay in Charlotte. You know, there are many things that people take for granted here. They don't realize what they have.
No doubt.
You know, this city.
I share that perspective.
This city is amazing. It's incredible. Can we improve a lot of things? Sure. Yeah. And I think part of that is I see Charlotte as a growing city, right? So let's say if Atlanta is an adult city, Charlotte is still like a teenager growing.
Sure.
So yeah, we don't have a big, you know, let's say mass transportation system, or downtown is not huge, but we're kind of growing. But it's very organized. When you see, you know, everything is very well planned. There's Charlotte 2040, 2030. You know, there are people always paying attention to how we grow. The city is very strategic as far as attracting, you know, talent, attracting companies, incentives. So I really don't see anything negative about it. I think that maybe the only thing that I will improve is just because this city is based on, banking, very professional. It's very, I will say, mechanic. I think the quality of life, even though it's a good quality of life at the surface, I think most people don't really live their life. They're just going through the motions. And I notice this contrast when I go back to Colombia, for example, and I have a lot of friends. They have their own business. I have friends that are architects. I have family there, and they may not have the abundance of things we have here and opportunities, but the way they enjoy each other, the way they laugh, the way they just enjoy life, like everyday life, is very different than here. And I'm like, man. And I can't have both worlds. Yeah. So how do you put it together? Because life can be very mechanic here.
Yeah.
Right? You can just, go work, go home, go back to work, go home. Yeah, get the car, get the house, do this, do that. And then you realize, and sometimes I even think about this. I'm like, man, it's been like 2 weeks and I haven't even laughed about anything. Like what's happening?
Well,
and
we need to hang out more.
Yes.
I'll get you laughing.
And everything, it's all about a deadline or about doing this or about making this progress. So it's like a double-edged sword because there's really good things, but sometimes the price you pay if you don't pay attention it's a very high price.
It's funny because I think I probably have the same experience looking back at the UK. There's things over there that I admire and that I miss. And then I look here and go, oh, but this is great. And it's that marrying of the two is always an interesting balance.
Yeah.
Grass is always greener, maybe.
That's right. Cool. Well, Piers, thanks so much for coming to the office today.
Absolutely.
I'm very proud about what you're doing. I think you have a great future ahead of you. And I look forward to staying in touch and helping each other.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I hope you enjoyed the beer.
I did, man. Do you have more?
You drained it. I do, actually.
Let's do it.
Those offline.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review if you like this content. And find us online at thepowerofdesignpodcast.com. I invite you to join my mission to become a better version of yourself through the power of design.